The moment my sister placed a plate of bread in front of my 8-year-old son, I knew something had changed in my family. Not because of the bread. Because everyone at the table had gone completely silent. My sister, Lauren, looked at my son, Ethan, and smiled politely. We didn't order a steak for him. Ethan looked down at the bread basket in front of him. Then he looked at me. He didn't complain. He didn't ask why his cousins were eating expensive steaks while he was supposed to sit there with bread. He simply whispered, "Mom, am I in trouble?" That question broke something inside me. I looked across the table at my father. He didn't even look embarrassed. Instead, he took a sip of his drink and said, "You should have packed him something." I smiled. It was the kind of smile people give when they've already made a decision. "Okay," I said quietly. But what they didn't know was that I had just made the most important decision of my life. My name is Claire Morgan. I was 35 years old, a single mother, and I worked as a pediatric nurse in a hospital outside Chicago. My son Ethan was 8. And if there was one thing I had learned after becoming his mother, it was that children remember how adults make them feel. They may forget what was said. They may forget what was served. But they remember whether they felt wanted. And my family had just made it painfully clear that Ethan wasn't wanted at their table. The dinner had been my father's 72nd birthday. My parents had invited everyone to a beautiful restaurant downtown. My sister Lauren arrived with her 2 children. My younger brother arrived with his daughter. And my father had apparently decided that tonight was going to be special. When we sat down, the waiter explained that Dad had arranged a family dinner and pre-ordered steaks for all the grandchildren. Ethan smiled. He loved steak. He leaned toward me and whispered, "Mom, Grandpa remembered my favorite food." I smiled at him. I guess he did. But then Lauren suddenly frowned at the waiter. "Wait. There should only be 3 steaks for the kids." The waiter checked his notes. "There are 4. Lauren glanced toward Ethan. Then she looked at my father. Dad cleared his throat. "Actually, Ethan's wasn't included." I thought I had misunderstood him. "What?" Dad shrugged. "Claire, we figured you could bring something for him. He's picky anyway." Ethan heard every word. Lauren picked up a piece of bread and placed it on his plate. "Here, sweetheart. You can have some of this." Her children were sitting beside him, eating steaks that cost more than most families spent on groceries in a week. Ethan stared at their plates, then at his bread. I looked at my father. "Dad, you knew Ethan was coming." "Yes." "And you ordered steaks for every other grandchild?" "Yes, Claire." I waited for him to realize how ridiculous that sounded. He didn't. Instead, he said, "Don't make a scene." That sentence changed everything. Because I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to leave. I reached for Ethan's jacket. "Come on." He looked confused. "But Mom, Grandpa's birthday. We can celebrate somewhere else." Dad immediately frowned. "Oh, Claire. Stop being dramatic." I stood up. "I'm not being dramatic." Lauren rolled her eyes. "You're really going to ruin Dad's birthday over a steak?" I looked at her. "No. You ruined it when you decided my son wasn't worth ordering dinner for." The table became silent. Ethan grabbed my hand. We walked out. Nobody followed us. Not Dad. Not Lauren. Not my brother. Nobody. That night, I took Ethan to a small diner near our apartment. I ordered him the biggest burger they had. When it arrived, he smiled. "Mom?" "Yeah." "Did Grandpa forget me?" I swallowed hard. "No, buddy." "Then why didn't he get me food?" I didn't want to teach my son to hate his grandfather. So I told him the truth without filling his heart with anger. Sometimes adults make selfish choices. But that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. Ethan nodded. Then he said something I never forgot. "I don't want to go to Grandpa's house anymore." I hugged him. "Okay." And for the first time, I stopped forcing my son to earn a place in a family that kept making him feel like he had to. 2 days later, my father called. I didn't answer. Then Lauren called. I didn't answer. Then my brother texted me. "Dad thinks you're overreacting." I replied with one sentence. "He can think whatever he wants." And that was the end of the conversation. For the next 2 weeks, I focused on Ethan. School, work, dinner, homework, normal life. Then, on a Tuesday morning, I received an email from my father. The subject line said, "Family business meeting important." I almost deleted it. My father owned a small medical supply company. For years, he had talked about eventually giving portions of the business to his children. I had never asked for anything. I had my own career, my own apartment, my own responsibilities. But apparently, Dad had decided it was time to discuss the future. I went to the meeting. My father, Lauren, and my brother were sitting around the conference table. Dad looked serious. "Claire, we need your help." I almost laughed. "Why?" Lauren answered. "The company has a major contract coming up. The hospital network you work with is considering changing suppliers." I stared at her. Then I understood. They wanted me to use my professional connections. "You want me to help your company get the contract?" Dad leaned forward. "It would be good for the family." I remembered Ethan sitting alone with a bread basket. I remembered my father saying, "You should have packed him something." I leaned back in my chair. "No." Lauren's face changed immediately. "What?" "No. I won't use my position at the hospital to help your company." Dad slammed his hand lightly against the table. "Claire, this is family." I looked directly at him. "Family?" Nobody answered. I continued. "You excluded my son from dinner, embarrassed him in front of his cousins, and told me I should have brought food for him. Now you're asking me to use my career to help you make money." Lauren crossed her arms. "That was 2 weeks ago." "Exactly." Dad's expression hardened. "You're holding a grudge." "No," I said. "I'm remembering." That ended the meeting. I walked out. I thought that was the end. I was wrong. 3 days later, my father called again. This time, his voice was different. He sounded nervous. "Claire, can we talk?" "About what?" "The contract." I sighed. "Dad, my answer hasn't changed." "No, it's not about that." There was a pause. Then he said, "Your sister made a mistake." I almost smiled. "Which one?" "Claire." "Sorry." Dad lowered his voice. "Lauren's husband lost his job." I said nothing. "They have a mortgage. 2 kids. They've been depending on the business." I finally understood why everyone suddenly needed me. "Dad, I'm sorry they're struggling." "She's asking you to reconsider." "No." "Claire, please." That word stopped me. My father had never said please to me. Not once. "Why no?" I asked. He didn't answer. "Dad, why did it take my sister losing money for you to remember I'm family?" Silence. Then he said something that I never expected. I didn't realize Ethan noticed. My chest tightened. "You didn't realize?" I thought he was too young. "He's 8. Dad sighed. "I know." "No, Dad. You don't know." I told him about the diner. I told him what Ethan had asked me. I told him that my son had decided he didn't want to visit his grandfather anymore. And then I said, "You didn't just exclude him from a meal. You taught him that love in this family comes with conditions." Dad didn't respond. I hung up. A week passed. Then another. I didn't hear anything. Until one Saturday morning, someone knocked on my apartment door. It was my father. He stood there holding a small paper bag. I almost closed the door. "Claire, wait. What are you doing here?" He looked uncomfortable. "I want to see Ethan." I shook my head. "Not today. Please." I studied his face. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Ethan appeared. He looked at Grandpa. My father looked at him. And for several seconds, neither said anything. Finally, Dad held out the bag. "I brought you something." Ethan looked at me. I didn't tell him what to do. He opened the bag. Inside was a small model airplane. Ethan loved airplanes. His eyes lit up for half a second. Then he looked at Grandpa. "Did you bring one for my cousins too?" My father froze. I almost cried. Because Ethan wasn't being rude. He was simply asking the question that his grandfather had taught him to ask. My father slowly shook his head. "No." Ethan nodded. Then he said, "That's okay." Dad's eyes became wet. "Ethan." My son looked at him. "Grandpa, next time can everybody eat together?" My father looked at me. I didn't rescue him. He had to answer his grandson himself. "Yes," he finally said. "Everybody." Ethan smiled. That was the first time I saw my father truly understand what he had done. A month later, my father invited us to dinner. Not at an expensive restaurant. Not at a fancy private table. At his house. And when we arrived, there were 4 plates already sitting at the table. 4 identical plates. For identical portions. No one had been forgotten. No one had been singled out. My father looked at Ethan. I made sure there's enough for everybody. Ethan smiled. Thanks, Grandpa. Then Dad turned toward me. I owe you an apology. I didn't say anything. He continued. I thought providing expensive things was the same as showing love. He looked down. I was wrong. Lauren was there too. She apologized. Not perfectly. Not dramatically. Just honestly. She admitted that she had treated Ethan differently because she thought my life as a single mother meant I couldn't give him what her children had. I told her something I've never forgotten. Ethan doesn't need to have more than your children. He just needs to know he's worth the same. Lauren nodded. And from that day forward, things slowly changed. Not overnight. Not magically. But they changed. And I learned something too. For years, I had believed keeping the peace meant staying quiet. It didn't. Sometimes keeping the peace means drawing a boundary. Sometimes loving your child means walking away from a table. And sometimes the strongest revenge isn't making people regret what they did. It's simply refusing to let their behavior decide how you see yourself. 2 weeks after that first dinner, I was sitting at my kitchen table with Ethan. He was building the model airplane Grandpa had given him. He suddenly looked up. Mom? Yeah. Do you think Grandpa likes me now? I smiled. I think Grandpa finally understands you. Ethan thought about that. Then he went back to his airplane. And I sat there quietly, realizing something. That night at the restaurant, my family thought they were taking a steak away from an 8-year-old boy. They didn't realize they were teaching his mother how to stop begging for a seat at their table. And once I stopped begging, I finally understood that I had never needed their table in the first place.